Please proceed, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. I will, sorry folks. I will call this land use planning meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. by formally recognizing that we are meeting on Aboriginal land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the beginning. As settlers, we're grateful for the opportunity to be good stewards of this land and thank all of the generations of people who have taken care of this place for thousands of years. In particular, we acknowledge the proud heritage of our neighbors from the Alderville First Nation and the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte. And our first motion will read that Council amend the July 22nd, 2020 planning meeting agenda by adding staff report regarding tender PW 2020-15 Sanford Reconstruction Project to section 5.3 and staff report regarding tender PW 2020-03 sidewalk curb and gutter repair to section 5.4. Is there a mover? That's moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Deputy Mayor Vink. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley,
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman. You're muted, Mary.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink,
Yes.
Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
Carried.
And our next motion will read that Council approve the July 22nd, 2020 planning meeting agenda as amended. Is there a mover?
I'll move it.
That's moved by Councillor Anderson and seconded by Councillor Bateman. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley,
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink,
Yes.
Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
Carried.
And members of council, please declare any pecuniary interests you may have, and if so, the general nature thereof. There are none noted. We'll move into our statutory public meeting with a motion that reads that council move into the July 22nd, 2020 statutory public meeting at 6:33 p.m. Is there a mover?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Anderson and seconded by Councillor Tadman. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley,
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink,
Yes.
Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. So we have two items in our statutory public meeting this evening. The first of which is with regard to a consent application. The purpose of the meeting is a request for a decision of council for the consent application being file number B03 2020. The owner Chaling Dewal, the agent Gregory King. The location is part lot 25, concession A, part 1 of registered plan 39R 11286, 158 Lisgar Street. And Mr. Ty, by what method and on what date was notice of this consent application given? And you're muted, Mr. Ty.
How's that?
You're good.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. This application was, notice was circulated by first class prepaid mail, July 3rd, 2020. all property owners within 60 meters of the subject property. Notice was also circulated to all the agencies as required under the Planning Act, as well as a signed notice was posted on the property.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. And would you please explain the background regarding this consent application?
This consent application is proposing to sever the subject property in order to create one additional residential building lot, as well as a retained residential building lot. If approved by council, the severed and retained parcels, new lots, would have identical frontage feet on Lisgar, as well as identical lot sizes being 1.78 acres. The property is currently zoned rural residential by virtue of a bylaw passed about a year ago, May, from community facility to rural residential.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. And Mr. King, as the agent, do you wish to make any comment this evening?
No, I've read the report by your staff and I concur with the conditions.
Thank you, Mr. King. I would ask if there are persons present who have any questions or comments regarding the proposed consent application. Madam Clerk, did we receive any questions or comments or requests?
We had no requests, and I'm not sure, I didn't receive any comments. I'm not sure if the planning department did or not.
Mr. Ty?
Your worship, I'm not aware of any comments having been received by the planning department.
Thank you. So I'll ask if there are questions or comments regarding the proposed consent from members of council. Councillor LeBlanc.
Yes, through your worship, for Daryl or the participant, on one of the lots, there's already a septic bed. Is it, they didn't know if it was present or not, and a well. I wonder if they found the septic bed.
Through the chair, the existing septic bed as well as the well were installed on the property. Property was created for the purpose of place of worship that did not proceed, as well as the proposed lot to the north already has an existing entrance off of Lisgar. And I'm to understand that the intent is to utilize the existing services. However, Mr. King may be able to clarify that.
Mr. King, any comment?
Yes, the existing well, septic system and driveway will be utilized as part of the proposed development.
Does that satisfy your question, Councillor LeBlanc?
Yes, your worship.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from members of council? Seeing none, I'll ask Mr. King, as the agent, do you have any final comments?
No, but thank you for inviting me to the meeting tonight, and thank you to staff for all their support and time.
Thank you, Mr. King, and thanks for joining us. Mr. Ty, do you have any final comments?
Nothing further, your worship, subject to any questions.
Thank you. So just by a nod of head or shake of head, does council wish to make a decision this evening? Seeing that as a yes. So the motion will read that this report regarding consent application B03-2020 as prepared by the municipal planning consultants be received, and that council of the municipality of Brighton grant provisional consent to application B03-2020 subject to the following conditions: that the geospatial data with respect to the subject lands be submitted to the satisfaction of the municipality, that all taxes on each of the severed and retained lots be in compliance with municipal requirements prior to the issuance of a certificate of official, and that 3 paper copies and a digital copy of a registrable survey for each of the severed lots and the appropriate deed transfer be prepared and deposited with the municipal clerk within 1 year of the granting of consent. Is there a mover? Deputy Mayor Vink, seconded by Councillor Rowley. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councillor Ron Anderson,
And you're muted, Ron.
Yes.
Counselor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Counselor Doug LeBlanc,
Yes.
Counselor Emily Raleigh,
Yes.
Counselor Mary Tadman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink,
We saw your lips move, Deputy Mayor, but we didn't hear your answer.
yes.
There you are.
Mayor Brian Ostrander,
Yes,
carried.
thank you. And our next item under the statutory public meeting is another consent application request being file number B04 2020. The owners are Alan and Lynn Simpson. The location is part lot 1, lots 1 and 2, plan 28, being 7 and 9 Butler Street. Ms. Doherty, by what method and on what date was notice of this consent application given?
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. Through you, Your Worship, notice of consent application B04 2020 was sent by first class mail July 3rd, 2020 to all property owners within 60 meters of the subject property. Notice was sent to agencies as required under the Planning Act, and in addition, a signed notice was also posted on the property.
Thank you, Ms. Doherty. Would you also please explain the background regarding this consent application?
Through you, Your Worship, consent application B04 2020 is requesting to sever the subject property, which would serve to create 2 residential lots, being the severed and retained, which were previously merged. The consent application will have the effect of creating 2 separate residential lots as they previously existed. The severed and retained lots would provide as follows. So the severed lot being 7 Butler Street would have a lot frontage of 73.5 feet and a lot area of 0.23 acres. The retained lot being 9 Butler Street would provide for a lot frontage of 67.45 feet and a lot area of 0.4 acres.
Thank you, Ms. Doherty. And Mr. Simpson, as the owner, do you wish to make any comments this evening?
Yes, I would. My family purchased this property in 1948, and I've lived on it pretty well all my life. I was born in the house at 7 Butler Street, and we purchased it from my mother a number of years ago, and we kept it. We lived there, and then we rebuilt a new home onto 9 Butler Street. And what we wanted to do now, we're asking is just for the future. We're all getting up in age. I'm getting up in age, and we just thought it would be simpler if it was severed now and matter straightened out.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. And normally now I would ask if there are persons present who have questions or comments. So I'll ask the clerk, did you receive any questions or comments from members of the public?
No, I did not.
Thank you. And I'll ask the planner, Ms. Doherty, did you receive any questions or comments from members of the public on this consent?
No, Your Worship, it did not.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments regarding the proposed consent from members of council?
Yes. Mayor, I'd like to speak.
Go ahead, Councillor Tadman. I just see your hand in the screen. So there you go.
Well,
Go
that's
ahead.
enough.
That's enough.
Yeah. I can vouch for the fact that Alan grew up there, and I remember his dad making fish boxes for the Quicks fisheries. So that's been in the family a long time, and I certainly think that it's a wise idea now, Ellen, to have the 2 separated and put in proper order. So certainly we'll support this.
Thank you, Councillor Tadman. Any other questions or comments from members of council? And Mr. Simpson, do you have any final comments?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Doherty, do you have any final comments?
No, Your Worship, that concludes my comments.
Thank you. And does council wish to make a decision on this consent application this evening?
Yes.
By a nod of heads, I will read the motion. The motion will read that this report regarding consent application B04 2020 is prepared by the municipal planning consultants be received, and that council of the municipality of Brighton grant provisional consent to application B04 2020 subject to the following conditions: that the severed lands be rezoned to the satisfaction of the municipality of Brighton, that geospatial data with respect to the subject lands be submitted to the satisfaction of the municipality, that all taxes on each of the severed and retained lots be in compliance with municipal requirements prior to the issuance of a certificate of official, and that 3 copies and a digital copy of a registrable survey for each of the severed lots and the appropriate deed transfer be prepared and deposited with the municipal clerk within 1 year of the granting of consent. Is there a mover?
So moved.
That's moved by Councillor Tadman and seconded by Councillor Rowley. Is there any discussion? Councillor Tadman, is that your hand up?
Yes, it is.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I guess
So,
I don't know why I had my hand up. Was it up? It must have been somebody else here in the house.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Councillor Ron Anderson. Your mic's on.
You're muted, Ron.
Yes.
Thank you.
Like
Councillor
Hollywood
Mark
Squares.
Bateman.
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc.
Yes.
Councillor Emily Valley.
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink. Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. And that ends our statutory public meeting with a motion that council move out of the July 22nd, 2020 statutory public meeting at 6:46 p.m. Is there a mover, please? It's moved by Councillor Rowley and seconded by Deputy Mayor Vink. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councillor Ron Anderson. Oh, there you are.
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman.
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc.
Yes.
Councillor Emily Raleigh.
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink. Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. That takes us into planning and development reports. Our first report is with regard to the official plan amendment OPA number 6 update. Ms. Kay, this is your report. Do you have anything, we've read it. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, everyone. I do not have anything to add or highlight other than after the time of report completion, I did receive another 2 phone calls from residents who are impacted by the proposed designation change, which is item number 1, column 6 in attachment or I guess appendix number 1 to your report. They were looking for, I was only able to connect actually with 1 out of the 2 phone calls. They were just looking for additional information, clarification. I didn't receive any objection to the designation change from those property owners, which is positive. Other than that, just questions from councillor staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the motion will read that council receives the report recommending the modifications to OPA number 6 as proposed by the County of Northumberland. Is there a mover? Moved by
There's a
Councillor Rapp.
second, sorry, there's a second part. If you look at the next sheet, it looks like it's separated.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm going to read, Councillor Rowley, I'm going to read that whole motion now because it's in 2 parts here. And then we'll see if you still want to move it. So I'll just start again. That council receives the report recommending the modifications to OPA number 6 as proposed by the County of Northumberland. And that council proceed to pass bylaw, being a bylaw to repeal bylaw 129, 2019, and being a bylaw to adopt OPA number 6 to the official plan for the corporation of the municipality of Brighton as modified by the County of Northumberland. Councillor Rowley, is still okay moving that? So I'll need a seconder. That's Councillor Anderson. And I will open the floor for discussion. Any comments or questions? Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the individuals that were mentioned were the ones. I sent an email. I don't know if it was Saturday or Sunday. I received a call late Friday night around 10:30 at night from 2 individuals that they did not receive the letter until that Friday. The letter was dated June 25th. And I forwarded that they had concerns in their phone number. So I'm not sure if we're talking about the same people or if there are more that are concerned and looking for extra information.
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Bateman, yes, they were the same people. I did contact both of them. I left a voicemail for one. I have a feeling that they're neighbors and maybe
They are.
one was getting information and she relayed the information to the other. So thank you for
If-
that. I did receive it.
If it's the same people, then they did communicate with each other because they did follow up. I just wanted to make, okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. Councillor LeBlanc.
Yes, through your worship, to Diana. When I read this, I read some things on secondary farming and some amendment on secondary farm practices. I also looked at some of the pictures where they said that it was farmland, were to follow the red line on the maps, and the maps took over Highway 30. I didn't know that the highway was part of prime farmland. But when you look at the mapping, is this the county change to ours, or are we changing to theirs? So which one is it? So is the upper tier asking lower tier to amend to their OP, or is our OP the same as, was our mapping the same as the old OP? I also, there's a lot to read and a lot to comprehend.
Councillor LeBlanc, can we get an answer to that question before we go into question number 2?
And 4 and 5. Thank you.
Ms. Kay?
Through you, your worship, thank you to Councillor LeBlanc. Yes, I guess the GIS mapping doesn't recognize roads in this case. And it's just it is the municipality's official plan redesignating the lands to be consistent with the county's official plan, which is also consistent with provincial mapping, which is why we're making the amendment change.
Okay.
Keeping in mind that the county planner is the approval authority in this case.
That is correct.
Councillor LeBlanc, you have another question.
Yes, to Diana from Wales, through you, Chair. By us having this motion, does this reopen our OP that we could possibly do amendments to go with the Watson's white paper and the provincial, the new provincial standards for designating land and adopting lands?
Ms. Kay?
For you, your worship, no, this OPA amendment is for the original amendment based on the scope of work that Wills was retained to do. So it's not to open it up again to look at additional scope. It is just to make revisions based on the county as the approval authority, their recommendations to the adopted updates. So we can't open this up for further discussion on policy that has occurred since then.
Because this is all part of the process of getting our OP approved. It's not yet been approved, right?
Through your worship, you're correct.
Thank you. You have another question, Councillor LeBlanc?
No, the answer, I'm satisfied. Thank you very
Very
much.
well, thank you. Any other questions from members of council? Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
No.
Councillor Emily Raleigh,
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman. You're unmuted, you're okay.
This is a tough one because I realize that most of this is just housekeeping. But I have a concern about how the agriculture land is being designated, because I like to see, especially young people, being allowed to do hobby farms and things like that in that area. Well, I guess we do that on a basis of each application. So I will say yes then.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink. Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes,
It's carried.
thank you. We'll move into our next staff report. Hang on for a second. Being the provincial consultation, ERO number 019-1679, proposed changes to the land needs assessment methodology under a Places to Grow growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. And ERO number 019-1680, proposed amendment 1 to a Places to Grow growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. Mr. Walsh, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Through your worship, the council, there is one thing to make mention of, and that's an error on attachment number 3. So revised attachment number 3 is circulated about 3 o'clock today, and it is the correct version of attachment 3. And it's simply the origin destination of place to work table. It's statistical information from Census Canada. Nothing turns on the motion on this attachment. It's really just provides some context to council for what additional information might be given in some regard at the time that we update, or that the county updates some growth forecasts.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. And I'll read the motion and then we'll move into discussion. That the report from the Director of Planning and Development be received. That prior to the July 31st, 2020 staff be directed to submit the following wording to the Environmental Registry of Ontario in response to the ERO posting number 019-1679. And the wording is, the Council of the Municipality of Brighton generally supports a simplified and flexible approach to land needs assessment, including the option of addressing provincial assumptions regarding growth. For example, the location of Brighton along the easterly boundary of Northumberland County is subject to influences both within the GGH and from outside of it. Further, the Council of the Municipality of Brighton supports municipalities being offered the choice of phasing their municipal comprehensive review or achieving conformity as part of one single new official plan or a plan amendment, and that staff be directed to submit the following wording to the Environmental Registry of Ontario in response to the posting ERO number 019-1680. And the wording is, the Council of the Municipality of Brighton generally supports proposed amendment number 1 to a Place to Grow growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, insofar as extending the planning horizon to 2051 and allowing municipalities to use higher growth forecasts than Schedule 3 of the plan. However, some added flexibility is encouraged in achieving conformity by the upper tier by July 1st, 2022, within 1 year of the upper tier official plan coming into effect. Is there a mover? Deputy Mayor Vink, is there a seconder? Councillor Rowley. Is there discussion? There being none noted, Madam Clerk, I'll ask you to call the vote, please.
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councillor Emily Raleigh,
Yes.
Councillor Mary Zadman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink, Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. Our next staff report will be somewhat verbal and somewhat by email from earlier this afternoon. It is with regard to the Sanford Street reconstruction tender. Mr. Poole, I'll just ask you to make some comment, please, because we don't have an official staff report in front of us.
Can't hear him.
Here we go.
My microphone's not working again. So this is simply a recommendation to accept a tender for the sidewalk. Oh, sorry, for Sanford Street reconstruction. We received 3 responses to our tender, and we have reviewed them in detail, checked references, and have provided a recommendation simply to accept the lowest bidder in this regard, being Accurex. And That's about it. It is within budget, well within budget. And see no problem going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Poole. And this is for full reconstruction of Sanford Street, including underground services and sidewalks, correct?
Correct. Although there is part of it, that part of the sanitary system is not being reconstructed in that it's in relatively good condition.
Thank you. So the motion will read that council award the Sanford reconstruction project to Accurix Incorporated for the tendered amount of $1,033,768.93 plus HST. Is there a mover? Councillor LeBlanc. Is there a seconder? Councillor Anderson. Is there any discussion, comments, or questions from members of council? Councillor Tadman.
Thank you, Mayor. Was this peer reviewed by a company? Did I see that someplace? And I couldn't find it later on in the day when I was looking back for it, but it seemed to me some other company peer reviewed the actual tenders. Is that correct?
Mr. Poole.
That's correct. The design firm for the project also reviewed the submissions and provided a detailed summary of the results, and made a recommendation also for the lowest bidder.
Thank you. And also, Mayor, through you to Mr. Poole, what about the Phillips subdivision? Is that going to happen? Be coordinated with that, or what's going to happen? Or are we going to do a piecemeal again?
Poole.
We are going to look into that now with Mr. Castleman, and there should be a synergy here between the two projects that they could be done at the same time. So if we have a positive recommendation of pass tonight, we will entertain discussions with Mr. Phillips and hopefully get it all going at the same time.
You were just waiting for a construction company to be named so that you could have that discussion. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
There you go. Councillor Rowley, did you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Poole, can you just clarify for me again what had we budgeted for this project?
Do you have the report?
It was in the $1.6 million range.
Okay.
That's.
And I have one more
memory.
question. Okay, that's okay. We're well within the budget then. But I do have another question then. When you say that we're not totally construction all of the sanitary sewer, was that a recommendation or a suggestion from all of the bidders that were involved in this? I just find it hard that if we're going to reconstruct sanitary sewer, why we wouldn't just completely do the whole thing.
Yes, initially we structured the tender that it did not require reconstruction of the entire sanitary sewer based on a recommendation from our sewer person. We did, however, include a provisional item to replace all the sewer. And depending on the results, which we now have, that is an option that's available to us to do all the pipes. There is discussion, there is debate about, while you were doing all the rest of the services, why aren't you doing the sanitary? Good question. The sewer man says that's in good condition and we should have enough life left in it. But we will be reviewing that going forward.
So once you're in the ground, if it needs to be replaced, I'm then assuming that we could still fall within budget if this extra needs to be done.
Yes, I've included some numbers for provisional items, which actually cover off the replacement of the entire sanitary sewer. So if it's deemed the best use, then yes, we're still well within budget.
Thank you.
Councillor LeBlanc, did you have a question?
I'm glad that they're starting this project through the chair for Mr. Poole. With starting now with this project, will we be able to finish, because we have a bylaw that we can't put asphalt on after the 1st of November? Will we have the asphalt coating and the stuff done, which is one question. The second question is that they probably looked at the cameraing for the stock for the sanitary sewers, so you would know which one were old and which one were good. So probably the contractors looked at those and made those choices. So you gotta look at those. And when it comes to roads, what is it? The other subdivision that wants to join on, the Phillips one, you wouldn't want him to come off late after the asphalt is put and having to cut it, and we'd have a bump for 15, 20 years. So I hope we organize that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc. Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask about the completion date. Do we know how long this will take? Because I know Councillor LeBlanc just mentioned you can't go past November. I know we have before, probably shouldn't have. What is this supposed to get done before that deadline? And then I have a follow-up.
Mr. Poole?
Yes, we expect construction to take about 2 months, and they should be able to complete it prior to the deadline. And we will endeavor to have it all paved at least the finished course all at one time, including the Phillips property.
Thank you. Supplementary, Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, so we're expecting the start date to be relatively soon, I assume. And is that the reason that this was pushed onto this agenda, so we can beat the deadline of November?
Mr. Poole?
Yeah, that's correct. We're hoping the contract will start within the next 2 weeks.
Councillor Anderson, I saw your hand.
I think do you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I think my questions have been answered, and thanks to Councillor Bateman and LeBlanc, which had the same questions. My largest concern is that we get started at it, and it does get done this year. Enough time's been spent, and for all kinds of reasons, and I truly hope that working with the Phillips development there, that we can get it all tidied up. And I know all the neighbors up there are looking forward to it too. So that's.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Tadman?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't like, gambling against weather, and seems to be again this year what we're doing. We're hoping, probably we should be praying too in this situation again to get everything done and get it paid. But if my recollection is clear, I think there was approval given to get the tenders out in February. So how come we're so late in getting them out, and all of a sudden a rush today is to get them out in July, and we might have been waiting till August, which would have really screwed us. So going forward, can we at least, when we get to budget time, give the go-ahead for this to get out and get the tenders out, so we're getting the best companies to come in to do it, and also to not be playing really with the weather.
I do think staff got pandemicked on their way to getting these tenders out, but Mr. Poole, could you speak to that?
Yes, the pandemic is a factor. However, we are going to endeavor in the future to get out earlier. Just workload was the other factor in this, and we are getting into a better place where we've got our tender documents structured better. We should, going forward, be quicker on the draw.
And to be clear, if we weren't holding this meeting tonight, I would have called a special meeting of council to deal with these tenders, so that we would have been issuing them before August. I was asked to call a special meeting, And I suggested we just add it to tonight's agenda. I understand this is a planning meeting, but this was important enough for the municipality and our taxpayers to get this job done quickly rather than waiting the 48 hours for a special meeting. I thought it made more sense to add to this meeting. And I see that you all agreed because you voted in favor of the amendment. Councillor Tadman, do you still have your hand up there?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
And Mr. Poole said that it was peer reviewed, the tender. So is that going to be the practice from now on, that we will hire a company to tender, to peer review most of the tenders? And under what authority does that happen? Does that have to come to council each time, or is that sort of carte blanche that we hire somebody to? I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying, is that what's going to happen from now on?
Well, my recollection of what Mr. Poole said was that it was the design firm that peer reviewed this. So it's the firm that designed the engineering for the roadway that reviewed the tender documents. So I don't know if we would have a peer reviewer for tender documents every time, but in this case, it made sense to get the engineers who did the design to help us out in that. But Mr. Poole, could you speak to that, please?
Yes, the review of the tenders was part of their scope of work, which was under an RFP when we went out to get design services. So on these type of projects, that's quite common to do. Is it always necessary? No. In this case, with workloads what they were, we thought it was expeditious to have them also contribute. We have the expertise in house. We just didn't have the time this time around to do it.
And it was paid for. Any other questions from members of council? Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, just a quick question, Mayor, you might even be able to answer it, whoever wants to. On the tender process that Councillor Tadman just brought up, I know last year, probably based on my proximity, I attended a few of the openings. What's the process been this year for the tender openings? Because I haven't seen any notices of them being opened.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Castleman, but I believe the process during COVID-19, after we provided staff with delegated authority, was that staff would simply use their delegated authority to open those tenders. Now that that delegated authority has been revoked, I imagine we'll go back to some sort of system where we will physically distantly open tenders. But Mr. Castleman?
I'm going to defer to the clerk because we adopted a new process with respect to the opening of tenders that went before council in the last 6 months or so. But Candace, you can speak to that.
Madam Clerk?
Yeah, you passed a new procurement policy that council doesn't come to the openings. So the openings are done by myself or Tom with the staff that has issued the tender.
So that was when we passed that procurement policy, what, at the beginning of the year or the end of last year?
And beginning of this year, and then we made an amendment to have electronic bids received as well.
Perfect, thank you. Councillor LeBlanc, you had a question.
Yes, it's through you, Your Worship. I was asking Mr. Scott Poole how he likes sitting in the big guy's chair.
Please don't answer that question, Mr. Poole. Any serious questions about the motion? I should maybe have asked that question. None being noted, I'll ask members of council to please unmute yourself because the clerk will call the vote. Madam Clerk?
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councillor Emily Raleigh,
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink, Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
Carries.
Thank you. The next report is with regard to the sidewalk curb and gutter repair tender. Mr. Poole, I'll ask you to speak to this one as well.
Yes, this is the annual repair tender that was issued. We received 4 submissions. And we've recommended approval of the lowest bidder who happens to be Neptune Security Systems, Inc., which was a very odd name for a sidewalk contractor, but we have thoroughly vetted their references and are quite satisfied that they have done and can do the job. Their bid was for 165,000 and change, and the operating budget for sidewalk repair was 371,000 and change. So we're well within budget, and we expect that we will add additional sidewalk, if at all possible, to advance the work farther. This year's priorities were Elizabeth Street, Young Street, Main Street, but we're also looking at Chapel and some on Ontario as well. And then we will expand that as time permits and budget permits.
Thank you, Mr. Poole. The motion will read that council award the sidewalk curb and gutter repair tender to Neptune Security Services, Inc. for the tendered amount of $165,447 plus HST. Is there a mover? Councillor Anderson. Seconded by Councillor Tadman. And I'll open the floor for discussion. Councillor Tadman, you're muted.
Well, that's unusual for being to be muted. But anyways, we didn't get much done in sidewalks last year. Did we put some in reserve? Can you remember? I know Linda's not here. Or is that part of the 360 or whatever it is, 365?
Mr. Poole?
Yeah, that was part of that was brought forward from last year.
Okay. We certainly need to get especially Main Street done. I'm actually quite embarrassed to say that they're in such bad shape, and all we've been doing for a few years is painting marks so people won't trip, and that's not good enough. And there's people that have really hurt themselves, so I'm really glad this is getting done, and the sooner the better.
Thank you, Councillor Tadman. I know that staff are well aware of the concerns along Main Street. They've heard it from probably all of the members of council, from the constituents that we hear from. Do keep in mind that the contractor last year did not complete the work at our request, so we are now in the process of finishing up work from 2019 and then going into the 2020 season as well. And it sounds like maybe we'll get a bit ahead of the 8 ball with this tender as well. So that sounds like a positive move. Deputy Mayor.
I'm just wondering if we have a potential start date.
Mr. Poole?
We just opened this tender yesterday, so we haven't had a chance to talk to who we think might be the successful bidder, subject to tonight's approval. So I don't have any idea at this time, but we will encourage them to start ASAP. They have to do their locates, so there's probably a 14-day delay there anyway. But hopefully they're going to start very soon after that, and we'll be encouraging them.
Councillor Anderson, you're muted, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Poole, are they given a date for a number of these streets or sidewalks to be completed by? Because we could end up in the similar situation as last year if we, is it just wide open? This is the project, this is the contract, or is there a specific time frame, like a schedule, or is that schedule checked by our people, but as they go as well, for quality and for timing.
Cool.
Yes, through your worship. There is I believe it's October 31st is the deadline that they have to be finished by. And we will be encouraging them. We had problems last year getting the work, the company moving and getting, proper work. So it ended prematurely, and we're gonna avoid that this year.
All right, we're counting on that. Thank you.
We're all counting on that, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess my concern is that, the bid once again is significantly lower than what we projected to spend in our budget. Not only that, significantly lower than the other three quotes. I guess my concern is that we don't fall into the same situation as last year. Yeah, it's a very unknown company. Securities doesn't really kind of jump sidewalk out at me when I read that, but I'm sure you've vetted all of this. My concern is that we're going to end up with the same kind of situation we were in last year when we're going once again with the lowest and significantly lower than all of the other bidders.
I think that's a fair concern given the numbers we're looking at. Mr. Poole, do you have any comment on that?
Just that we got very comfortable when checking the references. We had the alarm bells going when we saw the name of the company. For whatever reason, marketing reasons, they chose to go under that. They have a wide scope of business beyond sidewalks, beyond securities, and they've seemed to be a well-respected and effective company.
But they do have municipal sidewalk construction experience?
They have municipal experience, not specific to sidewalk, but they have worked for a number of municipalities for other types, including concrete work, but not specifically to sidewalks.
Can I just...
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. I guess that brings up a couple of questions. First of all, if you're going to do sidewalks, does it not take a certain type of equipment to do sidewalks, number one? Number two, is there someone who's done a really great job at sidewalks for us in the past that's on this list?
Not to my knowledge. I'm not familiar with, well, 3 of the 4, and certainly 2, aside from Neptune, there's 2 others that I'm not familiar with at all, either. In terms of equipment, there was an equipment list required with the tender, and they have the necessary equipment. Probably the key issue with sidewalks is the skill of concrete working, and it is still a hands-on manual labor, and this company had extensive experience in concrete work, and they've done sidewalks, just the sidewalks haven't been municipal sidewalks.
Councillor Tadman?
Have you, through you, Mayor, to Mr. Poole again, have you reached out to other municipalities and talked to their directors of this kind of infrastructure work? Because so often they know and use the company that they trust the most. So I'm just wondering, have you reached out to them?
We did not this year. We did last year, and we got led down the road on that one. They actually...
You mean the sidewalk?
Yeah, the sidewalk. The contract we selected last year had a very positive reference from Belleville and Quinte West. And a lot of it just depends on the crew that's assigned to their work. There is, like I say, there is skill in working concrete. And if you get an inexperienced crew, even though the company has been effective in the past in other locations, you can get bad work.
Councillor Anderson?
Well, with this, it sounds like our checks and balances is going to be what it's going to take to make sure that it gets done. We're not laying the concrete, but certainly we can see whether it's being done right or not being done right early.
I'm sure given last year's predicament, staff will be on this one with a pretty fine eye. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I just wanted to say something similar. Mr. Poole, this isn't about you. We're not grilling you. We're just all concerned because of the sidewalk history. We just want to see it get done this year. But I think you realize that, staff realizes that. So I think we're all going to anxiously wait to hear about when the sidewalks are starting and watch some progress. So thank you.
I think we're all looking forward to pretty sidewalks in the downtown of Brighton. Councillor Bateman. You're muted, Mark.
Like the others, I'm looking forward to the sidewalks getting done because we do have some areas that are in extremely rough shape on Main Street and others. But I have to admit, I'm very uneasy hearing that this company hasn't done municipal sidewalks, because I know concrete's concrete, but it's like, you know, being a mechanic is being a mechanic, but a diesel mechanic is different than a other mechanic. So there is expertise in those areas, and this is taxpayer dollars. So I really hope we get good work, because it seems like we're taking a bit of a chance. You know, because we said the previous company last year had good references, and we're going on good references from this one with no municipal sidewalk experience.
Anyone else? Councillor LeBlanc?
Yes, through you, Chair, for Mr. Poole. I'm going to take a high note. I'm going to say that they're good. And let's say they are really good and they can do management and resource leveling. If there's a capability of repairing some of the past work, I don't know if you've got that in from what was done last year, still needs repairing. There's a lot of trip hazards there. But if they can, and there's money in the budget, can you do as much sidewalk as capable that you can during the season? If the council would want that, and they start off a good foot and a good note. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that this goes well, because it's tiresome walking down the street and everybody looking at the councillor and asking the sidewalks to be fixed, or in front of the law office on a corner. That one there needs to be repaired, because we picked up a few people off of that one, and even the lawyer that's in that office has. So I'm just hoping this all goes good and we get going quick. But the other question is, how deep do you have to dig to get to have your dig permits? You say 14 days?
Yeah, there's a set time period that they guarantee service.
Okay.
But so in answer to several of the concerns, we will have a pre-construction meeting very soon, if not tomorrow, to discuss going forward with this company. We'll express our concerns about the unknowns. And if there's any flags, we will be coming back for a redirection. We understand the concerns and the problems of the past.
Thank you, Mr. Poole. Councillor Tadman.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to remind all, and especially staff, that the buck stops at the mayor's, first of all, because,
I thought it was your house.
well, there's no bucks at my house. I won't let bucks in. Anyways, and we realize that when complaints come in, we get blamed. It doesn't matter what the staff does. It's that damn council, they're not doing anything, or that damn council left those sidewalks, or or on and on it goes. So I just want everybody to be reminded that we have to take pride in our municipality and really do good service for all of our residents. I have heard so many complaints about poor service and rude service, and that's a reflection on you and me, council, and you too, staff. So I think everybody needs to pull their socks up and let's get moving as a team, and also let's show respect for one another.
There it is. Any further comment or question? Madam Clerk, I'll get you to call the vote, please, and I'll ask members of council to unmute themselves.
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley,
Caution, yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink, Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes,
It's carried.
thank you. We'll move into bylaws, and our only bylaw this evening is with regard to the official plan amendment number 6, the official plan update, and it will read: the council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to repeal bylaw 129, 2019, and being a bylaw to adopt official plan amendment number 6 as modified by the County of Northumberland. Is there a mover? Councillor Rowley, seconder. Councillor Anderson. Is there any further discussion on this? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
No.
Councillor Emily Rowley,
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink, Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes,
Carried.
thank you. And then we'll have a motion to proceed in camera. And once we do that, we'll take a quick 10-minute break before connecting with each other in the other meeting for the in-camera session. The motion to proceed into closed reads that council resolve itself into closed session July 22nd, 2020 at 7:32 p.m. pursuant to the Ontario Municipal Act 2001 as amended, subsection 239(2)B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. This is an operational matter. Is there any oh, sorry, I'll need a mover. That's moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Vink. Is there any discussion? Members of council, please unmute yourself. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley,
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink, Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. So we will reconvene in closed session at 7:45. See you all there. Mr. Randy, you'll put us into the parking lot. What's it called? The waiting room.
Waiting room. Yes, Your Worship. stand by. Please proceed, Your Worship.
Thank you. So we have adjourned our closed session meeting, and we will come into open session with a motion that reads that council rise and report from closed session July 22nd, 2020 at 8:22 p.m. Is there a mover? Deputy Mayor Vink, and I'll need a seconder. Councillor Tadman. Is there any discussion? I'll ask members of council to unmute, and Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley,
Yep.
Councillor Mary Tadman. Mary's muted.
You're muted, Mary.
Still muted. Still muted.
You're still muted, Mary. It won't unmute.
Okay. Well, we all see her hand there.
Yeah, and
Okay.
and we see she said yes. Just
She
nod
said
your head,
yes.
Mary. You're good. Yes.
Okay.
It says yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink and Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
Carried.
And finally, our confirmatory bylaw that council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton planning meeting held on July 22nd, 2020. Is there a mover? Deputy Mayor Vink,
I will.
seconded by Councillor Bateman.
Okay, let's go.
Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley,
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman. Oh, you just muted yourself again.
There you go.
There's something wrong. Yes.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Laura Vink,
Can't hear you, Laura.
she's muted.
You're muted now, but we couldn't hear you when you said yes.
Yes.
There you go.
Thank you. Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
And carried.
Behind Laura.
And it gives me great pleasure to adjourn this meeting at 8:25 p.m.
Goodbye.
We'll see you all for sure in August, and likely not before, but there will be a call of a special meeting likely for the very first part of August, and we'll determine a date soon enough. So see you all soon. Thank you all very much.
Thank
Good
you.
evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.